I've been wanting to do a theme on safety on social media for a while, and I finally figured out how I wanted to go about doing it. We're definitely not experts on safety at Kaiser. We're always learning, so I don't want to come across that we know everything about it. But I thought I would just talk about kind of how safety has changed over the years for us as our team's grown, where we look to learn about safety and get better at what we do. And then if you're in the coding industry, like where do I think you should start in terms of safety if you don't have a program and you're wanting to get one. So the evolution of our safety, when we first started, we had way less people. There was one person in the blasting shop, really nobody in powder coating because we were still putting booths together at that point. So there was a lot less going on, way fewer parts running through the shop. So the risk of safety accidents was a lot less back then because there's just not as much action, right? We still had safety handouts that we would go through, but they maybe didn't exactly apply. They're more just general safety topics. And then as we got bigger, our team started growing, doing more work. We started every week trying to do a safety meeting. They start becoming a little more applicable to maybe the new pieces of equipment that we have to make sure everybody knows how to operate them safely. And then fast forward to where we are today, we have the biggest teams that we've ever had, doing the most work that we've ever done. And so obviously when there's a lot more action, there's more chance for accidents to happen. So now we really try to think ahead, and we talk about safety every week. Our topics are really narrowed down now to all the stuff that we deal with on a day-to-day basis, and we can our work is somewhat seasonal, so we can kind of time the safety meetings to the time of year to make sure that we're talking about the stuff that the guys are experiencing at that time period. For example, heat's a big one for us, so we cover that in like late spring and throughout the summer to how to stay hydrated and make sure to take care of yourself so you don't end up getting any safety issues involving heat. And so I'm definitely the most focused on safety that I ever have been, which makes sense, right? That we have the most action going on. Over time, I've just gotten more and more interested. How I've gone about learning it is through our insurance company, Inspiro. They have a safety program, and there's one guy that's in charge of that. His name's Teague, and he usually does yearly safety meetings with us. And so after I got introduced to him a few years ago, we just took good notes at his meetings and tried to apply a lot of the things that he was saying, and did some of my own research. All you have to do is get on Google and search safety topics in your industry, and that's pretty straightforward. There's a lot of stuff there. And then recently, probably in the last year or so, one thing that we started doing was safety audits. So we would just on ourselves. I kind of took that from Teague because he walked through our shops a few years ago to just walk through and give us pointers on what we could do better. And so now we try to walk through a couple times a year and just with like a bird's eye view, try to be really objective and just be like, let's mark down everything that all the policies that we're violating that are in our safety manual. And then is there anything that we haven't been paying attention to that we should be, that are kind of like no-brainers, but we just forget about it because we're so busy. And that's helped us a lot. We've cleaned up a lot of just miscellaneous stuff that that maybe doesn't pose a huge risk, but there's simple solutions that you can do to be preventative. And you don't really notice that unless you just take the time to take a step back and zoom out and just look at your shops as a whole and figure out, is there anything that we could do better? And so that's what we use the audits for. And they've been really helpful for us. It's allowed us to just tidy up what we're doing and communicate probably a little bit better with our guys, because you see things going on that you feel like that everybody knows better or should know better. But then you realize like, oh, we don't really have a specific safety meeting on that, so how would anybody ever know? And so then it just allows our safety program to be more specific. Our audits haven't really like added more rules per se. It just helps us enforce or teach more about the ones that are already in place that just get ignored, essentially. So if you're wanting to get started with safety, like where would you in like blasting and coatings industry? So there's like general safety stuff for everybody, right? But then there's really specific safety stuff to your industry, and it changes from industry to industry because you're around different risks. But where do I think you should start? And this can be really basic stuff, right? Because it has to be pretty general. And by no means is this like the full encompassing list, but one of the easiest things to start with is just PPE, personal protective equipment. And that's going to probably change from shop to shop, but like some of the easy ones are just safety glasses, earplugs, gloves, and respirators. So we're in the coating industry, so respirators are important when we're spraying liquid or powder coating, and then also in our pretreatment bays. Sometimes it's a hard one because not everybody likes to wear their PPE, but it's more personal protective equipment turns into just like a habit. So once people get in the routine of wearing their safety glasses and their earplugs and their gloves and their respirators, like then they pretty much just always do it because it's just a habit thing. In terms of powder coating, one of the big safety risks is the environment in terms of heat, especially in the summers. So that's definitely something that you want to have in your safety program. And then thing that I've been really focused on a lot lately that I should have probably focused on first is just first aid. So like, what do you do when there is an accident? You know, how are you gonna solve that problem and quickly, you know, mitigate the risk or help the person that, you know, inevitably you're gonna have accidents, right? And something's gonna go wrong. Hopefully they're not life-threatening accidents, but even if they're not, you want to be able to provide first aid, get them fixed up, and back to work if they're capable of working the rest of the day, or like just go home and rest, right? So right now I'm in the middle of taking some first aid classes, so that way like I'm fully certified. I finished one on CPR and AED, which we have an AED, and now I'm just learning more about first aid because I'm a problem solver, like most everybody knows. And so like if there's an issue that comes up, I want to be able to go help. And I think the biggest thing to kind of sum up the safety in general is like you want to be prepared, right? That's like the whole point is, you know, you want everybody to understand the risks that they're working with on a day-to-day basis. And when there's a lot of moving parts to your processes, there's definitely more safety concerns. So you just want to point those out to everybody because really, you know, the guys on our team are coming to work to do their job and do work their craft and do really good at that. And usually that's going to be their biggest focus, right? Is to do a good job and to perform well. They're trying to put as many parts out the door at a really high quality as they can. That's their focus. And so they need to be reminded that we want to do it safely too. And so it's important that that's a focus, and then it's important to have everybody prepared. Like there's training for, and we train for all the different processes that we do, like hanging, packing, pre-treatment, spraying powder, spraying paint, blasting. But in terms of safety, we have a safety program and we have meetings and things, but those need to probably turn more into training. And that's what we've done the past couple of years is just, instead of being informative, try to like propose scenarios. Like if this happens, here are the steps that we want to take to try to help that person. Because if you're prepared and when an accident happens and everybody kind of knows what they need to be doing to help the person, then you can take care of it really quickly, and usually it's not gonna, you're gonna prevent it from being really bad, essentially. So that's why I'm taking some first aid classes, because I think that'll be helpful, and then just trying to communicate that with our team and like what do we need to do if a accident occurs, whether it's something small or something really big, whether it's like a full, you know, that you could have a shop-wide emergency. Hopefully that never happens, but you just want to have processes in place to make sure that you can take care of that. So I'm really focusing on right now just making sure that we can be as educated as we can be on safety. So I'm right there learning with you. I'm curious what other people use for their safety programs and how specific they are, because there's a lot of really general ones out there. Because you can do safety like two ways, right? You could be to just cover your bases and check the boxes, and it can be really general. because there's all kinds of safety stuff on the internet that's extremely general. And by doing those things, like, you're checking the box, like you are addressing safety. But then there's the other side where you can really dive in deep, try to make actually applicable for what you're doing, and then try to help teach your team so they understand, like, why is it important and why are we doing these things. And then if something goes wrong, here's what we're going to do. We work really good together as a team when we have issues with our production and we have rework. Everybody kind of knows, okay, we have a ton of rework. Everybody's frustrated, but everybody knows what they need to do to try to get us back on track. And so I'm trying to figure out how to make sure that everybody knows, like, if we have an accident, somebody gets hurt, what do we want everybody to do to help take care of that problem? And then how do we get back on track, basically? So that's where we're at with safety. Hopefully that helps. I guess the summary is, the more moving parts that you have, the more chance there is for stuff to go wrong.